Welcome to the Security Today podcast. I'm your host, Uncle Baer, and this podcast is brought to you by Sprinter Business Solutions. Check them out at sprinterit.com. We come today with another segment of Security Dojo, which you've seen a couple of times this year. We've had the Security Dojo segment, and I'm really allowing this segment to be more flexible in what it can be as long as it's bringing value. Similar to a dojo, you step in, you respect it, you walk away with more value than just the moves or just the performance. You walk away with discipline, understanding a better overall knowledge of the craft, and that is exactly what I want this segment to be. So we saw it early on with Veritas, where we went over facial authentication, talked to a couple of the game changers over there about their product. I'm also working on getting a product in from them to review on this Security Dojo segment, allowing this segment to also be reviews where we pull in hardware or we pull in software and we walk through it and we show you exactly how it works and you walk away with, brand new knowledge. The other company that we had on Security Dojo is GeoKey. GeoKey is an excellent MDU implementation, and I think it's the best of its kind that is out there right now for wireless locks that don't have to rely on Wi-Fi or a big backbone of infrastructure to work and work well, and a lot of it's completed through the mobile device. So there is that also, which I also want to get their software onto this, but as you can see, we're growing and we're building right at the Security Today podcast. And one of the things that I'm trying to do is present a new studio so that this segment itself, Security Dojo, can become something of extreme value to the segments that I already have out there. Now, when I say a new studio, you're like, what are you talking about? You got a hat up here. I always have a hat. I'm always usually wearing a hat. I'm more of a hat guy. So if you got hats, you send them to me. They might get on there. Stice Lock with Will and Huber Lock, both on Instagram. Excellent people. And then you can see I got my PDK can back here. Yes, that with the Tech Knowledge Worldwide sticker set. And obviously my license plates, that was my license plate for a long time, hip hop. I know I'm running through this, but so you're like, it looks the same studio to me. I know it does, but it's not. Because as you can see, I've got a couple of new views. Let me show you my favorite. That's right, top down, okay? So now we can really get into it. And I've got my lab pinning kit here that has been on my person and in my van for, 10, 11, 12 years. This is how I have rekeyed Kansas City. And we're going to be going through a couple of things. I just wanted to give a quick shout out to Backdoors and Breaches, from Anti-Siphon Training or Black Hills Information Security. This game, if you are in the IT space, is an easy way to get your team, your crew on point. And obviously, got a little Raspberry Pi with a little Kali Linux on it, flipper. And we've got our tool set, our pick set, and obviously PDK, because I rep them, and they gave me a mouse pad, and that's how you get on the show, is you give me a mouse pad or a hat, and you'll be here. So we've got that. We're going to go into a couple of browsers. We're going to go into a couple of videos in this episode, but it is a new studio in the realm of I'm trying to expand slowly but surely so that every single time you come to the Security Today podcast, you are leaving with value. And that's the most important thing. I want you to leave with value. I want to sharpen the tip of the point of the Security Today podcast spear, or the Black Picket Fence online spear, which is our educational arm, blackpicketfence.online.com. And I want to make sure that you're walking away from anything that I put out and you're leaving with value. It's just been something on my heart lately because I've been scrolling through feeds and I've been reading PDFs and white papers and all this other stuff. And I got to be honest, most of the time I leave it with not that much value. It was like, okay, I'm going to forget that next week. And I don't want that to be the case here. So we're expanding. We're doing this. Well, on this segment, to kind of flex the new studio muscle of working in OBS, not just in Riverside, and working with some other webcam essentials, we are going to talk about the lock bypass. Now, this is one of my favorite topics because the lock bypass it's kind of magic. You use tools and you just get into the door. It's like you're James Bond. And a lot of it's used by locksmiths. A lot of it's used by first responders, or you'll see like there's like 4 guys probably in the United States who have the job of breaking into things physically, and people pay them to do that. Somehow they swindled that, and the rest of us are just jealous. So if you would like to pay me to break into things, you know how to DM me, and I won't bash it anymore. But let's get right into it, okay? So I want to answer a couple questions today. The first question I want to answer is, what is a bypass? The second question is, what's the difference of a bypass versus picking or forcing a door open? The third is, what are some of the most known bypasses currently, some of the popular ones that you might see out there on social media, or if you start getting into the locksmithing security design field, what are some popular ones? And then how accurate is it to associate some of the more popular bypasses with actual attacks? Like, this is cool. It's really fun to look at. It's really fun to watch. But is it really a problem? Or, is it just some nerds that like to do it in their off time and watch a lot of lockpicking lawyer? And then finally, what is our duty as the integrator when it comes to the known bypasses? So when we're implementing security, what's our duty? Like what should we hold ourselves to morally when it comes to knowing what the bypass is and how to defend against it and working that into our design? Is it too much? Is it not enough? Should the customer not worry about it? And that's where you get into a lot of opinion, but I'm going to flex my opinion and hopefully you get on board, because I think that it's important as a security integrator, as a security implementer, that you walk away from these things thinking to yourself, what should I do here? I should perfect my craft. I should be better at what I do. And what is that going to take in this scenario? So let's get into it. First and foremost, the bypass, okay? Let's define what the bypass is. A lot of people want to know, is it lockpicking? Is it like it's just a screwdriver, just jamming it into the latch and pulling it back to get into the door? So this is how Uncle Baer defines a bypass, and I think it's how everyone should. Bypass in relation to locking mechanisms, okay, is when an individual uses a tool alongside special knowledge to function or activate the locking mechanism without traditional methods or intended design. This means that someone would use a technique for defeating a lock, right, by unlatching the locking mechanism without operating the lock's normal function. They're not putting a key in it, right? They're not turning the handle. They're getting into the mechanism in some other way, and they're causing it to still activate. And so lock bypassing is an important skill to know about, and even to really have, especially if you're a locksmith or a first responder, particularly for accessing, public buildings that might be openable from the inside in case of emergencies. But when emergency responders or a locksmith shows up onto site, they need to get into the building. It's a skill to have. However, it is worth noting that using these techniques without proper authorization is called illegal and can be unethical. I'm going to leave it at that. I think that a lot of people want to know, okay, so isn't this illegal though? Like, why would you need to learn this? Why would you need to know this? This isn't something that you should be studying because it's just a bad thing, right? You're getting into a space you're not authorized to be in. And if it's not your job, then just stay away from it. But we'll kind of touch on that because I have an affinity for the bypass. I love lockpicking. Lockpicking is a sport for sure. It is something to really challenge the mind and start to unlock things within yourself on how to look into something, right? So you see the lock, you have this tool and that tool, and then through feel, you're feeling and understanding how the lock is functioning with its pins and tumblers. And that is a skill that actually you will use outside of lockpicking a lock, right? You will use that skill when you are approaching problems or communication issues that you're having at work, or if you need to get one thing into another at the very base level of problems. So lockpicking, 100% I love, but bypass, I've got an affinity for it because bypassing is the building blocks of hacking. It is being able to solve a problem with another problem, right? It's being able to gain an answer with another question. So you look at the lock, and the lock says, "Can you open me?" And the answer to that question is, "Yes, I have a key," right? That was the intended answer for that question. But it's gaining the answer of, well, I can open it this way too, with another question of, how am I going to get into this without a key? And so it is the building blocks of hacking, right? It's the elemental form, the primordial soup, if you will, that constitutes hacking in the logical world. So we all know hackers, and we see the headlines and everything like that, but hacking was happening long before the computer was even around. And it started with things just like the bypass. How can I get past this mechanism without using the mechanism for its intended purpose? And understanding the genesis of hacking is crucial for the security professional. Whether in the cyber or real world context, you need to have a grasp of bypassing if you are a security integrator and even a security professional. You need to at least understand what it is, because if you're implementing security measures and you have no idea that this is something that exists on the market, then you don't have the full set of information. And we all know, especially in the security industry, if you don't have the full set of information, you can't fully secure what you're working with. So having knowledge of bypassing is essential for effective security practices. And one of my favorite quotes actually is from Andrew Bunny Huang, the guy who got in trouble for hacking the Xbox early in the, I think it was in the 90s or the early 2000s. And he says, "Without the right to tinker and explore, we risk becoming enslaved by technology. And the more we exercise the right to hack, the harder it will be to take that right away." And I think we have the right to hack. We have the right to break things, find the problem, right? And then answer that problem with another problem. And that is how we get a better world. And I understand that the hacking in and of itself can lead to horrible things, okay? Obviously, hacking can lead to horrible things. Bypassing security measures can lead to horrible things. But those horrible things and negative outcomes and connotations that they produce often just get automatically associated with the bypass or the hack itself, right? So it just, no matter what, if you take away the hurt though, if you take away that outcome, that connotation, if you take away the destruction, the action or the function of the bypass still stands alone. It still happened. You take away the hurt, that bypass still stands. And if it becomes something when it's alone, away from that hurt, away from that destruction, the bypass becomes something that's impressive and that's creative. And the hack, right, detached from the pain, is something that is an exploration. It takes an adventure to conjure it. And so this is why we must not stand for the breaking to hurt and moral filth, but champion the breaking to fix hard and holy work, right? The bypass and the hack are good things, and it is our right to tinker and explore and use those. Now, they are being used by immoral and hurt people to hurt other things, right? To take away life savings, to take away data, to get into security measures, to physically hurt people, end life, the whole nine, the whole spectrum, right? But that necessarily shouldn't be associated with the hack itself, because the hack itself, standing alone, if you would have seen it in a controlled lab, right? Or if you would have seen the bypass in a controlled and authorized environment, it's something that's like, wow, that's magic. That's excellent. I didn't even think of using that security device like that. Interesting. What can we do with this information? And so it becomes a good thing. So I want you to look at bypassing as a good thing, lockpicking as a good thing. And in understanding how something can be bypassed, we gain the understanding on how to keep the asset safer. And the greatest asset is the human, right? The mere fact that you're here learning what the most popular bypasses are in the Security Today podcast is ensuring that the next moment you have to security proof one, well, you will. and you'll end up protecting a kid's mother, or make sure that a brother and sister have a full pantry. So sometimes I remind myself in this industry, the need to educate and make this my obsession is because I say, quote unquote, I'm keeping Christmases. So sometimes when it's hard and I'm like, what am I doing this for? Like, I'm putting cameras into a pet hospital. Like, what am I doing this for? But I try to remind myself I'm keeping Christmases. I'm providing quality of life, ensuring people have a job, ensuring people have a purpose, and they take care of their family at best. And at worst, our work is actually making sure someone doesn't senselessly die at the hands of mental illness and hate today. Now, on a pet clinic, a CCTV video camera is not going to save a life, more than likely, right? But if I'm defense in depth and I'm putting in security measures and integrating my systems, then I know that I'm building these environments that are more secure. And I mean, the worst day, I know that I'm putting in something that could protect a life, that could save a life, that could give them that many more seconds to get out of the building, or that could give them that much more information of where the person is that is trying to end life. And at the easiest and the best case scenario, I'm just providing quality of life because that person isn't going to lose their job this month because the company has to shut down due to an incident or an event, whether that's internal, external, anything like that. So that is what we need to remind ourselves when we're exploring things like the bypass, but when we're exploring our careers, when we're exploring our industry and our trade craft. This is doing good, and we need to be reminded by that. And the more that we can know, the better we can do. Understanding how something can be bypassed will make the asset safer, right? And the most important asset is humans, and all the way at the other end of the spectrum is, just reputation or, data that costs some money or something like that. So yes, the internet, the police department, our government, more than likely your mother, your teachers in school, they're going to tell you that bypassing a lock is unethical and it's morally wrong and you shouldn't do that. But to understand how something functions will bring you the truth, right? And if you can do it with a lock, you can begin to do it with your philosophical understanding of how existence ought to function, how to break that existence, and how to manipulate it to open a door. I know that that's a little heady, right? That's a little haughty, maybe a little high on the horse, but to just do that. But I associate the locksmith often with the philosopher. I lovingly refer to the locksmith as the philosopher because that trade, it does something to you, man. It opens your understanding in ways that hanging sheetrock doesn't. Okay, I know we're just another trade. Security and locksmithing is just another trade. But like if philosophers knew how to use a screwdriver, which most of them probably don't, they would become locksmiths, not roofers. Because to the philosopher, there's not even a roof, right? So this is something that I'm passionate about, and this is something that I think that you should look into because if anything, if it's not your passion, you'll at least walk away with going, oh, wow, that's cool. Well, I know how that works. And maybe that little bit of I know how that works will help you want to know how other things work in your life, your relationships and your communication methods. And then you will become a better person. So let this transcend just a couple of screws and, bent pieces of metal. And really get into who you are and allow you to love what you're seeing. All that to say, bypassing is a technique used to defeat a lock by unlatching the underlying locking mechanism without actually operating the lock itself. And that's what we're going to be addressing on that plane today. I won't get any more philosophical than I have, but I want you to see that this is important. And it's important that you're here. It's important that you're learning it. And it's important that you take it into what you have in front of you in the security industry. So the next question, after what is the bypass, answered so profoundly by Professor Baer, is what is the difference of a bypass, picking, and forcing? Okay, so you understand that the The bypass in relation to locking mechanisms, here it is again, is when an individual uses a tool alongside special knowledge to function or activate the locking mechanism without traditional methods or its intended design. So then the question is, okay, is it actually different from lockpicking or forcing a door open? Now, the bypassing method is distinct from traditional lockpicking as it doesn't involve manipulating the lock cylinder's internal components like pins and tumblers. If we're being very technical, lockpicking would actually be closer to bypassing the key, because through the manipulation of the cylinder with tools, you're taking the key's place. Whereas when we bypass the lock, we are actually bypassing the key's cylinder's function. So yes, that's splitting hairs, but at the end of the day, lockpicking is such an established means of gaining entry around intended function that it stands alone, and it isn't quite the same as bypassing. And if you don't believe me, just Google lock sport. I mean, it's its own industry at this point, in a sense. So we can't really say that the bypass and lock picking are the same. They kind of get you the same outcome, but maybe they are that different question, right? Now, forcing a door open. While this is a method of bypassing, it isn't true bypassing because it isn't working alongside any special knowledge. Knowing how a latch retracts or a door opens, that's just common knowledge. So you didn't need to know that there's a rod connected to a cam that interconnects with the key cylinder and rotates below an opening in the lock body to get through the door, right? You just simply needed a hammer and a crowbar, and you hammered it into the gap real hard between the frame and the door, and you got in. So while forcing it is a method. It's a gray area. It is a method of bypassing. It's not necessarily the same as what we talk about when we say the lock bypass, right? So what I want to do today is I want to get into some popular bypasses that are out there in the environment that you're working in, that you're implementing, that you're designing, that you're installing into. There are bypasses that are more popular than others. You can find very specialized tools that are usually sold by locksmiths, or honestly, usually made by some local locksmith in a podunk town in the middle of Oklahoma, and he has like 3 or 4 of these weird wire things that get him into pretty much any door, right? And so there are specialties like that, but then there are some pretty popular ones that are either out there at, some DEF CON talk, or they're out there on TikTok or whatever it be. So the 3 main bypasses that we're going to talk about today, and 2 of them that I'm actually going to demonstrate here on the podcast, are the number 1, the PIR mag bypass, so bypassing a mag motion. Number 2 is the aluminum storefront deadbolt bypass, and number 3 is the aluminum storefront dead latch bypass. So before we go over those, though, I kind of want to get into a couple of different tools that I'm not going to demonstrate today, but I just want to show you a little bit of an array of tools that you can use when you're bypassing things. So let's go to my top-down view. As you can see, goodness gracious, that's beautiful. I can see it as well. Aren't you glad? Aren't you glad that the Baer is putting all of this work in for free? No, I'm just kidding. But so I want to show you a couple tools. First of all, you can see I've got my lockpicking kit here. I've got my Great Northern Railway from Montana button on there. But this is kind of my expert lockpicking kit. It folds out. It's from HPC. There's a lot of tools in here that are not HPC. But let's go over a couple tools. I brought some. First, I want to start with none other than the C-Rat. Okay, so this is by Ignition USA. It's called the C-Rat. It's like a multi-tool of emergency responders. You can see here that first off, it has this hex wrench cutout that give you 19, 17, 13, 10, and 8 millimeter. That is for like shutting off gas, shutting off water, those sorts of things. You have a window break on it right here. It points out, little corner right there for breaking windows. You've got this wedge in here, so you can shove that into a door and force your way in through wedging the door. Sometimes doors have enough flex that you can get the latch out around there. Like I said, the gas shut off. This is the shove knife. So these are all things that you can take notes on You can write down and you can go watch hours of YouTube, right? I'm not here to join the the red team survivalist lockpicking world. I obviously play in it and I obviously consume the content in it, but the Security Today podcast is for the integrator. It's for the implementation. It's for the design. It's for the white collar, CSO that needs to be on the up and up. And that's exactly what I'm doing. So this is called a shove knife. You shove it in between the door, folds out like this. You shove it into that gap, grab the latch and pull back, and you can get into some doors, not all. But hold on, I got to remember. Oh yeah, push here. So you got the shove knife, a little bit of a file, and then you've got this key blade, and this is why I bought it. So this is a key blade. It comes out once, and it kind of clicks out. You can hear that into place. And what you do with this is when you walk up to more often than not, it's the back door. It's usually just a hollow metal door with a metal frame that's sometimes filled, sometimes not. And it has a simple, LSDA storeroom lever on there with a keyhole, and that is your back door. And you can walk up and use this to shove in between, right? And you shove in between the door and you pull down. Here, let me go back to my home view for just a second. You shove in between the door and you pull down like that, and you can pop that door open. And that is very, very common. So that's kind of why I bought this guy, because that's gotten me into some doors for locksmithing when they're locked out because they have poor security. And it's great as a security implementer because what you can do is you can say, see how easy that was? Yeah, I can fix that. I can get you a dead latch. I can get you a strike guard. I don't know what this is. That was just on there. Cool. So that's the C-Rat. You also have wedges, right? These are just window wedges for actually getting into a car lockout that I carry in a kit of mine. And you can wedge that into doors. You can wedge that into strikes. Just kind of matters what you're looking at. This is another wedge that I carry. This is also for automotive locksmithing. Is you put on there and you can kind of pry against it with this big rubber thing. I've got another pry bar that I don't have on here right now. And you can also see, when we're speaking of prying, these are just hard plastic sheets. Now these are from Sparrow locks. And what we're going to go over today is going to involve some Sparrow lock picks and bypass tools, and they are one of my favorite go-tos. I've talked to the gentleman that owns it. He's very kind, and they are a good go-to. So you can check them out. I'll put the link in the show notes so you can go there. But these are hard plastics. They're different thicknesses. But sometimes you can use these and kind of shove between the door and get in, especially if you're using another tool also to kind of help with that prying or that forcing. So there's those. And then you have one of my favorite bypass tools that it's the most fun to operate because it's cool to see. But this is a double door deadbolt thumb turn. So you will see in aluminum frame, storefront, retail, oftentimes you'll have a double door there that is with a hook bolt, and on the inside there's a little tiny thumb turn, right? That you turn that thumb turn and it fires that hook bolt. Well, you can shove this thing between the door. Let's go back here. You shove this between the door and you kind of turn it like that, and then you bring it back. And when you bring it back in and you catch that thumb turn in that little carriage, in that little bent piece, you can turn this right here and it'll turn it. So you just, boom, turn the thumb turn and you're in. So that is a fun tool that you can add to your repertoire, or if you're a locksmith, you should have, but you should at least know about it. That's out there and working. The other one is Euro drivers. So in my pick set here, you can see that it looks like this little golf club. And what you do is you stick this into a Euro driver. You'll see Euro drivers, obviously, in Europe, but a lot of times you'll see them on storm windows, storm doors. It's kind of like a bell-shaped. I should pull a picture up for it. But it's a driver, and you kind of push that in there, and you catch the middle piece of it. Let me look real quick, just a second. we will find a Euro driver, because this is exactly why I set up the studio that I'm in. I'm sorry. It's probably Euro cylinder. We were looking at the driver, but we are going to look at a Euro cylinder. So if you are watching, which you should be, this episode, and we come to Securitron, we'll be talking about later. You can see up here in my tabs, but we come to my screen. You'll see here in images, this is what a Euro driver looks like. You'll see these on Stormfront doors. You'll see them with high security keys often, and that's because Europe is far ahead of America in key technology. But you can use this driver to push into that lock and go back there and catch that back piece. You see that little back turning cam, and you can get into it. So that's what Euro drivers are. I didn't have a Euro lock to show that today. And then something like this too. This is called the Comb 45 from Sparrow Locks, and the Comb 45, it goes into master lock and very cheap padlocks, which you'd be surprised, but you can see them, you can find them around very easily. And it goes into the keyway, and then you use these little prongs on the end of it, whether it's a 4-pin lock or a 5-pin lock, and you just push up as far as you can, and it actually pushes those pins above the cylinder and allows you to turn it. So that's called the Comb 45, 2 zigzags. Baby, that's all you need. So let me show you what master lock it would work on for here. We'll go back over to my desktop, and let me see here. You'll see all kinds of master locks, and we'll talk about them. There's other bypass methods just like this. It looks just like this. They're thin, very thin. They usually have just one key, and you can just slip that Comb 45 into the key cylinder, pull all the pins to the top of the cylinder, and turn the cylinder very, very easily. So that's another bypass tool that I got. And I got some other things in there, and we'll go over some things today from that toolkit. But there are hundreds of bypass tools out there because their locks vary in so many different ways. One last one that I wanted to show you here is the combination. So if we go back to my screen here, you can see this guy right here. So if you see one of these, usually the first or the second little pinwheel right there, or sometimes you can go down the line, there's going to be a flat spot on the inside of that wheel. There's a secondary wheel that's causing it to turn to a spot where a bar can drop in and allow this mechanism to operate, and this bolt to extract from the lock body. And the way that you do that is you use something like this. This is called a decoder, and you can kind of see it's wedged in there, and you put it right in between the wheel and the casing. It's thin enough that it'll fit in there, and then you thumb the wheel as you go down it, and you'll feel the flat spot, and that will tell you what number you need to be on, and you can decode these. So that's another one that I like to show and is fun to use. But anyways, let's get into some of the bypasses that we're going to talk about today. Those are just all sorts of bypass tools. You should know about them. You can look them up. Sparrow, obviously, just run down the list. They've got YouTube videos of how they work, and you can type them in. The Lockpicking Lawyer, I've already mentioned him on here. He's like him and Bosnian Bill is another YouTube. Those two guys have been lockpicking on YouTube for what would feel like decades at this point. So you can check them out, but let's get into, first of all, the PIR mag bypass. Now, the first thing that I want to do is I want to show you a video, and this is a common video from, like I said, Your Locks Don't Work on TikTok or Instagram, and he was posting this to show how he is bypassing mag locks by bypassing the PIR motion. So we all know what a mag lock is. It's that magnetic lock that sits at the top of the door, strikes over mags till the day I die, and I'm going to prove that right now. And when you have that mag lock, because of safety codes, you need to have a motion on the inside of the door that sees somebody walking up to the door, so that if someone needs to exit, it unlocks the mag, right? And let me show you that right now. So we're going to walk through this. This is Your Locks Don't Work. He takes an air compress can, and if you turn air compress cans upside down, then they shoot whatever that is, the nitrogen or whatever, out of the can, and it creates a mist or a cloud. And you can see him doing that just like this, and that cloud is visible by the infrared motion, which is looking for distances and things to change. And when you do that, like this one, that's brilliant. You shoot that in there and it allows it to change. So change state and unlock the door. Now, this is potentially a huge problem, because I've seen people do this with a vape pen. They've took a big vape and then they put their mouth on the, which is gross, but they put their mouth on the sliding door, right? And they blow their vape into it and the motion catches it. I've seen them do it with a cat toy that was flat enough that they could slip it under the door and kind of wiggle it around, and the motion detector sees it and unlocks the mag. So this is a popular way to bypass a access control door that has a mag lock on it. Now, the basic setups of a mag is you're going to have that mag lock, you're going to have that motion, you're also going to have an exit button somewhere that you need to touch. Two forms of egress. That's NFPA 101. I think it's 10.5 or 10.2. You can see that in my Black Picket Fence Online professional access wiring course if you'd like to take that and become better knowledgeable in it. But because of that motion being there, then we kind of have a problem, because that motion has to see somebody coming. Now, I will tell you this, and this is what kicked off everything for the bypass segment of the Security Dojo. Let me come over here. And I was looking at manuals, because that's what I do as a security designer and installer. I need to know amps. I need to know this. I need to know that. And we were actually servicing this one. But I came to the XMS exit motion. We've all seen this. It's usually displayed as also a T-Rex is what I think they used to call them. But Assa Abloy bought Securitron, and they didn't buy the T-Rex. That's another brand. But Securitron makes one that looks very similar, or vice versa, and Assa Abloy owns them now. And so the XMS exit motion sensor, I was needing to know something about it, and if you come to their website and you scroll down to the bottom, you can get to literature, and through literature, I can click their operating manual. Now, when I come to their operating manual, which first of all, Assa Abloy and Ultronics are the two best operating manual creators on the market, because they give it to you straight and fast with no frill, and you can get to it quick. So if you come down here, though, I was looking at it, I was like, oh, okay, and this and that, and I scrolled by and I was like, hold up, what am I looking at? So in figure 1, they have placement options for the sensor. Now, obviously right here on the left-hand side, you can see that that is the most common placement. I have only ever seen that placement. Sometimes you'll see the motion detector on the ceiling, if the ceiling is low enough. And sometimes you'll see it on the frame if there's not a lot of space above the door in the frame, or right above the door there. I've even seen it on like a splice can. They'll put the splice can up there, they'll run the banana cable out to it, and then they'll splice off from it, and they'll put the motion right on the outside of the can. Whatever it is, it almost always sits at 12 o'clock right there above the door, and it's looking out for someone walking up to it so that when it sees somebody, it can let them out. But then I noticed in the XMS PDF, you actually start to see that they have different placements. So they have one placement out here at the right corner of the door, and it's kind of like sashed, right? It's like a sash, like across the door. For security applications, the pattern should sweep across the exit device, but miss the bottom of the door. The sensor is positioned beyond the hinge side of the door. And then you can also see that if it doesn't have like a panic bar, or like a crash bar, or it has a knob, it says when a doorknob is present, or a lever, whatever you're using, present in the security application, the pattern can actually be made more narrow. Now, in this last one, I'm like, what the hell is going on? So the sensor can be positioned at the side of the security application on doors at the end of corridors, right? So where there's like the end of a hallway, there's 2 hallways there. So it's not looking out into the lobby or anything like that. But I was like, I've never seen this. I don't know when they changed this. I'm sure I've looked at the XMS manual in the last 10 years for sure, but I have never seen this. And so I started looking at like Bosch DS161s. Those are my favorite to put in, some of the best motions out there. You cannot narrow or change the field of view, which you can see on the XMS actually here. It's kind of got this window in it, and it'll show you in the manual. If you come down, let me see here. Yeah, you can see right underneath the motion window, right underneath that sensor window, there's actually aiming screws. So I'm sure those are just blinders inside of there that when you turn them, it narrows the view or it moves it to the left or moves it to the right. But whatever it be, they are positing different places to put it. So I saw this, I was like, what the hell? And so I immediately called up Chris Wilson, and I was like, dude, have you ever heard of this? And he was like, no, I never have seen this, and I don't know exactly if this would be necessary. So it got me thinking, and that's how we got to the bypass episode. So they're positing that there is, and this would mitigate some of your problems. For instance, we saw that guy blow steam at the top of the door, right, in that closed hallway, and it was coming out the top of the door, and that's what hit the sensor and let it in. And if that motion detector was angled or was set up at the right corner and angled across the door, they wouldn't have got it. My guy, the guy that I saw use the cat toy, wouldn't have got it. He put it under the door. And so it says here that the exit device must miss the bottom of the door for that purpose in and of itself. So I started thinking, I was like, okay, that's fine. Let me see right here. I grabbed the image of that door, right? And as you can see here, here's our image. Let's zoom into that a little bit. This is the door that he blew steam up here, and you can see right there, 12 o'clock. And this is actually a recess door, right? It's pocketed in here. But they are positing that you could do 2 things here. The first thing that you could do is you could set this puppy up over here, right? And you could have it shoot across the door that way and probably end like the field of view is like ending right here, right? Look at that, man. That's excellent. I'm an artiste. So they're positing that you can put it right there. His little air compress trick would not have worked. But you're asking yourself, like, it's not going against any codes. It's not going against any like industry installation standards that I could find or that I talked to a couple of people about. But you could put it there. The other way that you could do it is, let's go back here, is they're positing that maybe on a door like this, you could set it on the inside of the door. Like if this was a crash bar right there, right? You could set it on the inside of the door or here, or maybe here, and it would push out and, catch this area so that when someone walked up and they put their hand on the crash bar, if it had a mag. Now this is a strike door. I can't see the mag up there. And you'll see motions on a strike door as well, right? For auditing purposes. And that's security standard. You should be putting motions on your strike if you're doing full implementations. I mean, obviously, if you're working with like a small to medium business, you're just doing a couple of doors. They don't need like the audit feature, and they've already got a strike in place and they're looking to spend $2. You're like, okay, well, whatever. But that is security standard. So you have that feature. But even if it was a mag, you could see that, this is how they're getting in, and that wouldn't have worked. This wouldn't have worked. Up at the top of the door with the smoke, a cat toy underneath there wouldn't have worked because it wouldn't have caught the motion. Seems legit to me, okay? So that is one way that you can fix that problem. The PIR mag bypass. We'll talk about later how accurate these things how accurate these bypasses are to associate with criminals. I can tell you this right now. The only time that I've seen this used is in movies, is in TikToks of first responders who know the trick because they have to get into buildings, or it is with, bored pen testers like, what's his name? Devian or whatever it is. That guy. So I don't know. Like, I've never seen this used criminally, or people say, well, I don't know how he got in last night. And then they look at the audit report and they're like, the motion fired, or they got a security camera and they see someone stick a can up there and get into it. But this is probably, of the three that we're going to talk about today, this is probably the most, the easiest to come by. So it takes the dumbest person, right? And you're going to see as we get into some of these tools from Sparrow and, bypassing some of these intricate locking mechanisms that go in aluminum storefront doors, you're going to see that it's going to take a little bit more intellect than just your usual criminal. Your usual criminal is angry, usually male. They're also, short-sighted. It's usually crime of opportunity. And because of all of that, you kind of have this barrier of entry that's already in their head, But this is easy, and they could see that on TikTok and think, I can buy compressed air from the gas station down at the street, and I've been dying to get into that jewelry store, or I've been dying to get into this area and, steal some of the copper or something like that. So this is probably the most likely. And I wonder, I don't have a solution to this. I'm not going to start telling technicians that I'm over to install at that right corner. I'm not quite there yet, or in that pattern for that exit device, right? I'm not quite there yet, but shoot, man, that feels like it solves it. So I want you to comment on whatever you're seeing this on, right? Maybe you're seeing this on Spotify, YouTube. Maybe you're seeing this as a little bit of a clip. I want you to comment. Like, what do you think? You think you can use that to do that? Or do you think you would start implementing that? It's hard because security integrators and security installers, oftentimes we find the rut, right? This is the groove, man. I've put doors in like this for 37 years. I don't need to be changing it now, okay? I've never had to come out and resurface something because some guy put a can of air or used his new vape thingy to get in, right? So that's hard. We don't, as security integrators, change much. But should we? I mean, that guy's not getting in. The video that we saw, right? The guy that I saw blow vape or the cat toy, they're not getting in. And that seems like it's not much. It doesn't take much effort to change this installation to make it unusual. Now, if this was the common installation, then there would probably be some cat toy that's on like a pole, right? That you put up here and it dangles over or something like that. Or you blow smoke in through the hinge side right here or something like that. So yes and no, right? Yes and no. On to the next one, though. I want to know what you think. Look, moving on, we're going to go to the aluminum storefront door dead latch bypass. That's right. So if you want to see, this is a dead latch. This is an aluminum storefront dead latch, okay? These are a dime a dozen. These things are out there in droves, and they usually go into an electric strike if it's an access door. If it's not an access door, they're just going into a regular strike. They have a paddle on one side, right? It's like a push paddle, or it's either a push paddle or what was the other one? Oh, it's like a little lever handle, like a little Euro handle that's only about this long. And you turn that, it turns the cam inside of there and gets you out. And then on the outside, there's usually a keyhole. Even if there is an electric strike, there's always like a key on the outside that if you turn that key, right? Hold on. You can see if you turn that key, it pulls that back. Now, what's interesting is this is called a dead latch. Adams Rite was the first one to make it. There's hundreds of different brands out there that are making it, but Adams Rite is to make it. I think it's like the 1850, right? Maybe something like that. And you can get these. This is an Adams Rite, actually a traditional Adams Rite one. And they come in different back sets and those sorts of things if you're looking to install, but it's got this little piece right here. This is considered your dead latch. These are on lever handles. You'll see a dead latch. It usually rides on the flat portion of the latch itself, and it pushes in. The purpose of this, if you don't know, is that when this door is closed in a strike, which is either in the frame, electric or not, that this will be pushed out into the strike hole, and this dead latch will be depressed. And if this dead latch is depressed, even at a gap like that in the door, you cannot get a screwdriver in there and pry this thing back, right? Now, you can pry it back with the key because the key pulls both. So you get into the door, and it shuts closed, and, but this is still depressed. You're not going to pry that in there with a flathead or anything, a crowbar or whatever it be. You're going to move the door or the frame before you move that latch. Now, a lot of times, this is the security issue, is that the installer doesn't really know this, right? Because their security installers notoriously don't know door hardware. This is why, as a security installer, you need to be up on your hardware. You need to know how to adjust a closer, probably install a closer, install hinges, continuous hinges, pivots. You need to be able to replace and install, Adams Rite dead latches, dead bolts, install, lever handles, storeroom, classroom function, privacy. So you need to know all of that as a security installer because this is the bread and butter that you're playing with. But most don't. And when the door closes, both of those actually depress because the strike hole is this wide, right? And so when the strike hole is this wide and it falls in, and they're both depressed, now I can get a screwdriver in there and I can pull that back and get the door open because this is not pulled or depressed by the frame. So that's what we need to know about that. Now, you'll see that on the back side of this is what my key is turning, is this little cam. And this cam has a node on the end of it, and it's grabbing down in there. It's grabbing that little lip, right? And when I grab that lip and I pull back, it's what's pulling my latch back. You can see there's two tracks there. Track for the spring to push it back out, and a track to keep this on track. And then this is interconnected with the dead latch below it. So one of the ways that we can bypass this, now you could pick the lock, right? You pick the lock and you turn it with your tension wrench and you can get in, but you don't have to pick the lock. Because one of the ways that we can do this is with the Sparrows Adams Rite bypass tool, okay? Now, the Sparrow Adams Rite bypass tool is just this little wire, like spring steel, right? And it's curved in a very certain way. And the way that you function this is, if you come to the door, we're going to go through the keyway, and we're going to get out the back of the keyway to grab that lip. So I take my Adams Rite dead latch bypass tool. I come in here and I try to push those pins up, right? And when I push the pins up, and this takes a little bit of finesse, you can see that I can pop it out in the back there. Listen, I practiced this like 30 times before I got on the mic, so don't think it's that easy. But it looks cool when I do it, and I'm Bond, so just believe that. But you can see I can pop it out of there. Now, there's a thumb turn on the other side, or a push paddle, or whatever it be, right? So there's going to be less space in here than even this. So I can't like pop it out here and get a play with it when it's in the door. But when I pop it out there, if I take it and I bring it all the way to the bottom of the keyway, and then I rotate that puppy around. Hold on. I push here. I get it past that little lip. And then I rotate it all the way around, and I come in here. I can grab that dead latch. And sometimes that will be enough. What you just saw will be enough to get it open because the gaps in these doors, especially over time with weathering, the aluminum frames and the aluminum setup with the windows and everything like that, you'll really be able to just, pull it even that much and get it. But you can see that I can pull it back all the way if I need to with just that spring steel. And so that is one way to bypass that. And then once I do it, right? So I come in here, and let me see if I can do it at an angle that you can see this. I come in here and I grab that, and I pull it, and I open the door, and then I just, finagle this, pull my lock out, and my door's open. Bypassed, just like that. And that's it right there. I used special knowledge because I know how that is set up in the dead latch. I used a tool, and I opened the door without its intended function or intended design, which is with a key. And that is why this is considered a bypass. This is your Sparrow dead latch bypass tool. How freaking cool is that? So that's your dead latch. The next thing that you're going to see is if it's not a dead latch, then it is almost always a dead bolt, okay? And this is really common too because you don't have to put a push paddle in, which is expensive. And, you know, small to medium business retailers, they do not like to spend money on security. That is the bane of their existence. So this is the deadbolt that you traditionally see. It fits in the same exact hole, right? And instead of it going into an electric strike or a strike, this just flips into an opening in the frame. And then you can't pull that door open. Now, I don't have to use a key for this because there's rods in the back of there, which I'll show you in just a second. But this is what it looks like when it's thrown out. And this is thrown into the frame. And usually there's like the frame sits here, right? You can usually walk up to these when they're locked. You can look into them and see that that bolt is thrown so that you know that it's a bolt. Now, it uses a different tail piece than this one. It's actually like it's bigger. It's not that little node or nodule that's at the top of it, but it's actually like a thicker nodule that comes off of the cam. And what it does is it comes down here and it grabs these rods and it puts pressure on them. Let me see if I got a screwdriver, just a sec. I don't think this will fit in there, but it puts pressure on these rods right here. It pulls them down from this track so that they can come up here and then lock again, and now it's in the unlock position. And so that's why I had to flip it out. This is Milwaukee, by the way. Of course, want to support the red. So you could see I was grabbing it with my fingernail right there. See, I can grab both sides, and then when I pull on that, I flip it down, and that lock opens. Now, the cool thing about this is there is a Sparrow tool also to bypass this function. And we won't need to go through the keyway on this function, but we will actually be going in through the lock body. So there's a couple different ones because they got different hook sizes, right? And there's right and left-handed. So this is called the Sparrow long shot. And it is just a spring steel that's been folded. It's very thin. It's got a hook on the end of it. That hook comes in different sizes. Some are bigger, some are smaller. Because as you can see, this is actually labeled Ilco. So Ilco makes one of these Adams Rite bodies that functions as a dead latch, even though Adams Rite is kind of the Kleenex, if you will, right, of the tissue world, right? Like Kleenex is of the tissue world. Adams Rite is of the aluminum storefront lock body world. You can see this is Ilco, so it comes with a couple different ones. But the way that you do this is that you have right and left-handed. Let me find a left-handed here so that, okay. So you know that the door is closed and there's, you know, this much of a gap. And what you can do is you can take this lock, right? Or I'm sorry, this long shot, little spring steel with a hook, and you can come in here and you set it down like that, kind of put some back pressure on it, right? And then it'll fold into that because it can pass between the bolt and the lock body. And now you can see that I'm in there, right? I'm rummaging around in that device. And if I come up, and now you can see it's on the outside here. Right there. Let's see if we can get it to focus. There it goes. I can come right up there and grab that rod, right? And then with one quick action, I pull down like that, and the door's unlocked, and I'm in. How freaking cool is that? I'm sorry, it just gets me, man. I freaking love that. So let me show it one more time, and then I'll walk you through exactly what it's doing in there, grabbing those rods. But you come up to the door, you place this thing, put a little back pressure, get in there. You can see that I'm in it. I come around. What I'm doing is I'm just grabbing that rod, and I kind of give it one swift motion, pull down off the rod, and I'm in the building. The deadbolt's thrown. It's that easy. And so you can see that when this is thrown, right, I'm coming in through here. And let me see. I want to really show this because this is freaking cool. And I come up there and I grab that rod just like that. And that's where I'm pulling down on that and letting it flow along that track. And then I pull my long shot out and I'm in. It's that easy. And so I've bypassed it because I have special knowledge of what's inside of here. I have a tool and I'm using it and I'm unlocking it without its intended purpose, which is with a key, right? So that is the Sparrow long shot. And there are bypass tools like this all over. But the reason that I show these two is because you saw how easy it was to get the dead latch in there. And I get it in there, boom, catch it, to use the long shot. And these things are millions. There's millions of these dead latches and these dead bolts out there on aluminum storefront. And so it's fairly popular. Now I want to show you one thing. And Trevor Mans from Adams Rite gave me this at ISC. He goes, dude, you got to check this out. Because he knew I would know exactly what was happening. So this is a hook bolt, right? It functions just like the deadbolt, except this is hooking in and catching the frame. Sometimes you'll see this on one door. Sometimes you'll see this on a double door, that it'll hook the other. It'll hook just a hole cut into the other frame of the door, and it'll keep that. And you take your long shot, right? I've got my tool. I come in here, and I can get in there. Super easy, right? And I come back out. But if you see, what is this? Hold on a second. That little line wasn't on this guy. No siree. You see that little line? What that line is, and if you look in here, is just a plate of metal that they've stuck in there, just a plate of pot metal that goes straight across the area. And what that does is as I pull my long shot hook down, look at that. Let me focus it just a little. Remember, I'm new to this. Okay. Aha, perfect. I can't get my hook over that piece of metal to get up there and get the rod. And that is a defense. The MS 1950, right? Hold on, focus. I can't get my rod past that little metal plate, which means that I can't get up there. And get that rod and pull down on it. I just catch that. So this is actually an actionable defense against the aluminum storefront deadbolt or deadbolt hook latch. And they have this also, I think that they have this in the dead latch as well that you can get a hold of, that will not let me use one of these to get up there and get that hook. And you can do that in your implementation because you're speccing this, right? You're saying I need this, or I need a hook bolt, or I need a dead bolt, or I need a dead latch because of my strike, because of my mag, because of whatever it is, my electrified panic device. I need this to be in my site. And you're speccing that. And now you can spec something that comes with an actionable defense against the aluminum storefront bypass with the long shot. The reason that I wanted to show you that, first of all, Trevor, thank you, and thank you, Asa Abloy, for, an Adams Rite, for taking this into consideration, because it begs the question, right? Like, how much do manufacturers how much effort do they go to protect their devices from bypassing materials? So the question becomes, how accurate is it to associate some of the more popular bypasses with actual attacks? And that question is basically asking, should we care? Like, cool trick, Baer. You got some tools that'll get you in, and Uncle Baer's not doing anything to, ruin his reputation or tank his career. So he's not even who we have to worry about, but cool trick. Well, I mean, should we care? And the question is more of like a two-part answer. I know that I'm a purist, okay? If you listen to anything on this podcast, you know that I'm a purist. And I know that I come off extreme in some security positions that I take, like the religious, genocidal, racist, analytics-driven fuckpot known as Hike Vision, okay? Or the hashtag Be the Better Tech sermon that I bang my as-is physical security Bible with my fist like I've never been late at an access can on a Friday before a 3-day holiday, right? Telling you to wire the can better. Which I have, you pawns. So, but I am a man of intention, okay? And I raise a stink about these things because a stink should be raised. We should have a stunk about certain things in our industry that are causing it to degrade over time or causing it to chip away at the culture or the understanding. And when it comes to the bypass, I guess the question is, should we be concerned? It feels like yes, to the civilian, because watching a local locksmith or finding, your locks don't work on TikTok, use the tool to do this makes a really good evening news report and makes good TV because it's scary, it's Bondish. It's like, holy shit, he just walked up and the door opened. And if he can do it, then the bad guys can just get in. And yeah, I mean, honestly, that's true. With this lock and that tool, if the bad guy is practiced, then he can just get in. But all of those things you must worry about. Is that the thing you need to worry about? That door being used as a long shot, that's not the only thing you need to worry about when it comes to a business or when it comes to manufacturing or when it comes to some industrial complex or anything like that. You have a ton of things to worry about. So is this the thing that we want to worry about? Because what we're doing right now with this question is like, it's a crude version of something called a risk matrix in security consulting or in risk and threat assessment. And the risk matrix that we use with security consultants and we try to grasp is when we look at each individual thing that might be a security risk, right? Is it something that we need to worry about? And let me show you this real quick. I'll pull it up on my screen so that if you're watching, you can kind of get a understanding of what I'm talking about. But just a moment. Yeah, perfect. Okay, here we go. So you can see that this is a risk assessment matrix, and you're going to ask two questions. You're going to ask, how likely is it that what I just saw could happen? And then what are the consequences of that? What's the severity? Is that like just okay, so he gets in, he steals a few Starbucks beans, you know what I'm saying, from one of 700 stores we have, whatever? Or is it like super severe? Like, yeah, he got into an area that was super sensitive to our business and it let out a ton of information of our customers, and that's now out there on the black market, and social securities are being stolen and credit cards are being charged. Like, how severe is the problem? And you'll see that in this matrix right here. So you start with, at the very bottom, it's very unlikely and it is negligible. It just doesn't really matter if it happens. All the way up to, it is very likely that this risk will happen, and also this risk is very severe if it does happen. So how likely is the bypass, right? Well, that's the question. So there's roughly 1.5 million burglaries per year, and that's the one where you sneak in and steal. Robbery is the one where you like bop the owner on the head and steal what they have. Burglary is where you like use your little long shot. You drop the thing and you sneak in at night and you take the coffee beans. I don't know what else to tell you. So 1.5 million burglaries per year. The FBI say that out of those 1.5 million, 2% use what they consider as a lockpicking tool or a shim. Now, we're going to assume that it's even less that are using a bypass tool, but that's like, out of the 1.5 million burglaries, that's 30,000 break-ins a year using picks or shims, okay? Now, America has roughly 135 million homes and around another 1 million private businesses that are brick and mortar. So the opportunity to burglarize 136 million homes or retail stores with a bypass tool, the likelihood that it will be lockpicks or shims is a 0.02% chance. I can assure you that we're dealing with even less than that when it comes to the bypass, but we're dealing with less than a 0.02% chance of what we're seeing happening right now. Another element to the likelihood of the bypass tool on our risk matrix is that the majority of these tools being used, if not by locksmiths or first responders, are being used by hobbyists or bored individuals. Any genuine crime coming from them is probably more opportunist than it is premeditated, and it's probably someone who's just bored and saw this online, or it's someone who's a hobbyist and they do that and then they walk away and they're not even in it to do any sort of crime. And so it's just so low. It's very unlikely that this is going to happen. And then in most spaces that this would happen, because what we saw today was the PIR mag, and that is going to have more consequence, right? So maybe we're looking at minor or moderate, usually not significant or severe. If that's the case, you're working in other things. But especially with the long shot or the Adams Rite dead latch bypass tool that we used, you can see it here. Especially something like this. Oh man, we're dealing with negligible to minor, okay? You're looking at the storefront, the retail. You're looking at H&M. You're looking at, maybe the bank, but they lock stuff in the safe. I'm trying to think of aluminum storefront doors that have huge assets behind them that aren't also things that are using other defense in depth measures, and that is just going to be very negligible. So honestly, when it comes to the bypass, Uncle Baer can say that it is a very low risk. It is a very low risk. So then the question becomes, okay, what is our duty as the integrator when it comes to known bypasses? The question rests almost fully on the circumstance, and that circumstance is where our duty and devotion to security comes in. We can see that our likelihood will live very rare. Every single time that the long shot is used from Sparrow, it's going to be super rare that it's actually crime, okay? But you have to, then we need to be thinking about our client on that side. So if it is super low, then let's think about what could happen, right? If it does happen, let's think about what the client has to offer in that transaction. Are the assets that they hold high value and they'd be desired greatly by others? Is it sensitive information that if discovered would do irrefutable damage to individuals, the nation, or the company's reputation? Getting beyond the door, would that be extreme consequences to the environment and livelihood of the surrounding communities? Because if the answer is no to those questions, then most would say just not to pay mind to designing any defenses, right, against something like that. In fact, it should be expected that the security designer is using defense in-depth tactics. And there's a camera, there's lighting, there's an intrusion detection system, and possibly a live guard or authority response once that bolt drops and that mag bolt releases and that door breaks the contact. Somewhere beyond that door, they're going to run into another circle of defense, right? And that's also true. So it would be easy to look at this and say, wow, Asa, what a waste of engineering time that you spent on that. Or I'm not going to worry about that when I'm putting in security hardware. But let me flip the script a little bit of what our duty as the integrator is when it comes to security as a whole, okay? So we should be constantly improving our methods. Yes, some are tried and true, but innovation must be a cognitive thought that we use as a leading factor in our design and implementation. If we are putting in security as time goes on, we need to be people who are open, who walk around with open palms and say, teach me more. Let me know more. I want to be the best at what I'm doing. I'm not just hardening a site, but I'm actually hardening my solutions by learning, improving, swapping parts, saying that I've always used this, but I'm actually going to use this now because I saw it and I thought that it's more secure. I need to be not just hardening the site that I'm working on, but hardening my solution setup. And I talk about this on the podcast all the time that, hey, here's a product, add that to your product repertoire, right? Add that to what you're sitting down, whether you're adding a whole section like, hey, I should be pitching intercom, or whether you're adding like, oh, I used to use the MS 1850, from Asa Abloy. But after seeing Uncle Baer's Security Dojo, it's like $2 more, right? So or something like that. I don't actually know. But what I'm saying is the margin is not wide, right? And so I'm going to start using the MS 1950 because at least I know I'm securing my customers, and I can even show them, if it's a little bit more money, what I'm putting in, because when people see how security works, they're much more apt to pay for it. The hard part in security, and this is a little bit of a rant, but the hard part in selling security is a lot of times people don't even understand what they're buying. They know that they're buying a camera. They know that they're buying a card reader, but they don't understand what they're buying when it comes down to the mechanisms of if they're using WIGAN or OSDP, or if they're using the MS 1950 over the MS 1850. They don't know why. So they just care about the number. But as soon as you show them maybe news articles, or you show them podcasts like this, or you show them how it can be defeated and why I'm putting this measure in instead of that measure, they're fine. Pay for it. I don't care. Good. I'm glad you told me that. And then another point is that we want to know that we are important. That is our role to do everything that I've said, because we as security individuals, we work left of Bang. Okay, Bang is the event. That's the security event that happened. That's the guy who walked up with the long shot, got into the building, stole a bunch of data out of the IT room because there wasn't even a card reader on the IT closet, and or he dropped a little Raspberry Pi or a rubber ducky, and now he's in our system watching everything we do. And we are the people who are working on the left side of that timeline, okay? And oftentimes, we like to give honor and recognition, as we should, to the people who work on the right of Bang, because the right of Bang is far more dangerous to the individual, right? Whether it's the police, the first responder, the judge, the lawyer, or the doctor, like all those people work on the right side of the event. But we are equal in importance to those professions as security integrators, and we work on the left side of that event. So this career calling should request that your morals are higher than your margin. Let's be honest. You can make 30% margin all day, which is fat compared to other trades, right? But you need to make sure that your morals are higher than your margin. And that'll get you out of hike. You know, that'll get you out of all the other stuff, all the other shit that is plaguing our industry right now. But you are a security professional, and you need to take that seriously. Hands down. You need to hashtag be the better tech. So then let's get to the conclusion, shall we? You need to know how threats are a risk to your customer. You need to understand what a risk matrix is. You need to be working those risk matrix into your implementation and your design. And you need to be in the know, when it comes to things like the bypass techniques and tools that are used to defeat locks. This is the stuff you need to know. It's like knowing your enemy, right? Like knowing yourself. And you need to know your industry and the products that are out there, like the MS 1950. So when you're putting in an Adams Rite, deadbolt or hook bolt or whatever it is, instead of the standard, you know that you're protecting your client even more. Maybe this door is street side, right? You have to take that into account. Maybe this door is right on the edge of the street and there's not great lighting. And if some bored little, physical script kitty, if you will, wants to go over there with the Sparrow long shot and get in and do some destruction, maybe like break a few printers or like whip cream the office or something that causes us a couple of days down, which means that we lose money, your client loses money, then yeah, think about the MS 1950, put that in. And now you don't have to worry about that. And in the end, hashtag be the better tech. Hold your head high in the work that you're doing and see yourself as a life and safety professional to the surrounding world, right? It's important. You're important. These things are important. I hope that you gained something from this. This has been the episode for Security Dojo. This is the thing that's going to launch it into infinity on how awesome this segment is going to become. So I'm so glad you came. Also, I am so glad and so happy and so thankful, so appreciative for all the support that I have gotten from other professionals that I hold in high regards. That I highly esteem. They come and they say, "Oh man, you're doing great work," and that matters. because I want to be doing great work, and I want the work that I'm doing alongside their work as we rise up together in this industry from a social media, independent journalist type of perspective. As we rise up together and we lean on each other to make the industry better, we're making the world better, the world safer. And that's what we're here to do. So thank you so much, guys. I almost don't even want to hang up the phone and get off this podcast because I've been having such a time of my life doing this. So thanks so much, guys, and I appreciate you, and I appreciate that you're hanging in. I got new views for you, top down, screen work, all this other stuff. This is my first time at operating all this. This is all off the cuff. Obviously, you see me reading a little bit from the notes that I wanted to work through as I do it, because I want to make sure that you're getting excellent content and not me honing my improv craft of okay, next we're gonna do this. So I'm trying to make this stuff quality. They will get better from these little demos and reviews, and it will all continue to get better. So thank you so much, guys, and we will see you next week on the Security Today podcast. Take this podcast and go share it, please. Go send it to all your friends in the security industry. Send it to your friends who you want to be in the security industry, and tell your mother. And we'll see you next time. Deuces.